Hello children. Now I am proceeding with the session 5 from the chapter income from house property, and the topic which I intend to discuss today in this fifth session is today we have the format for computing the taxable income from let out property. So about this I shall discuss later when I discuss the problems. Now let us just move with the theoretical part. First of all, we are supposed to determine the annual value. Determination of annual value is the first step in the computation of income from house property. Gross annual value. For calculating the gross annual value, the following factors should be considered. So, what are the factors to be considered at the time of computing the gross annual value? The first is fair rental value. What do we understand with fair rental value? What is a fair rent? Fair rent refers to the rent of a similar type of house in the same locality. It is an important consideration in the determination of gross annual value of the house property. The first factor which you are supposed to consider at the time of calculating the gross annual value is the fair rental value. Fair rental value is nothing but the rent of similar kind of a house in the same locality which we are supposed to consider at the time of calculating the gross annual value. Next you have actual rent. What is this actual rent? The second factor which you are supposed to consider at the time of calculating the gross annual value is the actual rent. Actual rent is the rent which is actually received from the house property. Whatever the rent you are actually receiving from the house property is called as a actual rent. In case tenant pays composite rent, that is rent of the building, plant and machinery, etc., the rent of house property should be separated from rent of plant and machinery furniture. In session 2, I have explained you about what is the composite rent. Composite rent is nothing but rent, actual rent of the house plus rent for the services rendered by the owner. So in such case, if the tenant is paying the composite rent and that rent includes the rent for the house property as well as the charges and the services for different services rendered by the owner, then what you're supposed to do is that under the head income from house property, when you're calculating the gross annual value, you're supposed to consider only the rent of the house property and the charges for the services has to be excluded. So in case the tenant is paying the composite rent for the rent of the rent of the building, plant and machinery, etc., rent of the house should be separated from the rent of the plant, machinery, etc., and rent for the house should be considered at the time of calculating the actual rent. Next, in the continuation of that, actual rent is nothing but actual rent is reduced by the amount of rent of plant and machinery, furniture, etc., and balance should be treated as actual rent of house property and should be considered at the time of calculating the gross annual value. Coming to the third factor, the third factor is municipal rental value. The municipal corporation or the community will usually conduct the periodical survey of the house properties in their local limits for the purpose of levying the local taxes. On the basis of the survey conducted by the on the basis of the survey conducted by the municipal corporations or the committee, then you are supposed to fix the rental value which serves as a basis for levying the taxes. The rental value so fixed is called as a municipal rental value. So municipal rental value is the rental value fixed by the municipal corporation or the committee, and for in order to fix this rental value, what does the municipal corporation or the committee do? They conduct the periodical survey of the house properties in their local limits, and only after conducting that, the main purpose of conducting the periodical survey of the house properties in their local limits is they want to levy the local taxes. So based on the survey conducted by the municipal corporations or the committees, a certain amount of value is fixed and that rental value is called as municipal rental value. Next you have the standard rent. there is an authority which is called as Rent Control Act, and the rent that is fixed under Rent Control Act is called as a standard rent. This is another factor which is considered at the time of calculating the gross annual value, the standard rent. Next, you have expected rental value. What is this expected rental value? The municipal rental value as fixed by the municipal authorities, or the fair rental value, whichever is higher is considered, and then such higher among the two will be compared with the standard rent, and when after comparing, whichever is less is treated as expected rental value. I repeat, what is this expected rental value? The municipal rental value as fixed by the municipal corporations or the committee is considered, and fair rental value is also considered. Both are compared, whichever is higher is selected, and whichever higher selected will be further compared with the standard rent, and whichever is less will be treated as expected rental value. Next, what is this unrealized rent? As the word suggests, unrealized, which is not realized. So here it refers to the rent that could not be realized by the owner from his tenant. So what is unrealized rent? Unrealized rent is the rent which is not realized by the owner of the house property from his tenant. Unrealized rent can be deducted from annual value if the following conditions are satisfied. So what is the condition here is that you can actually deduct the unrealized rent from the annual value, but the following conditions are supposed to be satisfied. What is the first condition? The tenancy should be bona fide. The tenancy should bona fide means there should not be any bad intentions. The cause should be good one. So the tenancy should be bona fide. Next, the defaulting tenant has vacated the property. When the tenant who is not able to pay the rent has already vacated the property, then it is called as the unrealized rent. The defaulting tenant is not in occupation of any other property belonging to the owner. After vacating that particular house, he has not occupied any other property which is owned by the owner. In such case also, that condition is also acceptable. Next, the SSC has undertaken all necessary steps to institute legal protection. So the SSC, that is the owner of the house, has taken all the legal proceedings to realize the unpaid rent from the tenant. In spite of doing that, if nothing is realized, then it is called as unrealized rent. And if all these following conditions have been satisfied, then the rent is treated as unrealized rent and is deducted from the gross annual value. Next, you have vacancy period rent. What is vacancy period rent? It refers to the rent for the period during which let out property has remained vacant in the previous year. Vacancy period rent is nothing but the rent for the period during which the property that is being let out is not having any persons in it. It has been remained vacant during the previous year. So vacancy period rent is the rent for the period during which the let out property has remained vacant during the previous year. So here we have a simple format, determination of gross annual value. So step by step there is it's been given very clearly. Ultimately what are we computing here is that we are computing the gross annual value. So when I take up the problems, then you will get a clear picture as to how you are supposed to compute with the gross annual value. With this I compute, with this I complete the fifth session of the chapter income from house property, wherein I have explained to you as to how you determine the annual value, and while computing the gross annual value, what are the different factors you should consider. Thank you.